Today, we're going to dig into the absolutely incredible story of the Kingdom of Benin. We're talking about a super sophisticated, powerful state that completely mastered its environment and dominated its region for hundreds of years, only to face a catastrophic collision with a modern empire.
So, our story starts right here in West Africa. For centuries, the Kingdom of Benin didn't just survive, it thrived in this dense tropical rainforest. Now, you gotta understand, a lot of people thought an environment like this, with disease, tough terrain, and not so great soil, was just too difficult for any large scale society to ever get off the ground.
But Benin proved them all wrong. They didn't just survive, they built an empire. And their story, well, it's basically a masterclass in political and military genius. It was all born from a need to solve the fundamental problem of survival, not just from outside threats, but from enemies within. So, what was their secret? How did they pull it off? Let's start at the very beginning, with the foundations of the kingdom and the huge challenges it had to overcome just to exist in the first place. Okay, the sheer scale of early Benin's organization is just staggering. To put this into perspective, archaeologists have found over 10,000 kilometers of earthworks and moats. I mean, that's longer than the Great Wall of China. And this wasn't just one big wall, it was a massive, sprawling network built to defend a really complex society. But here's the thing, all those incredible physical defenses, they couldn't protect the kingdom from its biggest weakness, the constant, debilitating infighting among its own powerful chiefs. It was a problem that threatened to tear the whole state apart from the inside out. And then, in the 15th century, the solution arrived. A series of radical reforms didn't just solve the problem of internal conflict, they completely transformed Benin into one of the most formidable military powers in the entire region. Now this right here, this is the critical turning point. Around the year 1440, a new king, Oba Iware the Great, came to power. He put an end to the whole era of disorganized militias and instead built a brand new, centralized army that was loyal to the throne, and only the throne. Okay, let's dive into how he did this. Iware set up a clear professional command structure. At the very top, you had the Oba, the supreme military commander. No question about it. And below him was a high command of warrior chiefs, with the Iyase serving as the general commander of the entire army. And this wasn't just some chart on a wall, it was a complete living system. The army was divided into distinct regiments. Warrior groups had these awesome, intimidating names designed to strike fear, like the soldier ants that sting the king's enemies. How cool is that? They even used powerful war songs to boost morale and courage before battle. And behind it all, you had this whole logistics network of specialized guilds, like blacksmiths, just churning out the weapons of war. And this is what I find so cool about their army. Look at this. They weren't stuck in the past. They obviously honored traditional weapons like spears and shields, but they were also super quick to incorporate new technologies, like the firearms that European traders brought in. This adaptability, this was absolutely key to their power. But this created a brand new and very, very dangerous problem. See, when you create a powerful, centralized army, you have to answer one critical question. Who gets to control it? You see, the real key to Benin's long-term survival wasn't just its military might. It was this political system that was so finely balanced, so intricate, that it could actually harness the ambition of its most powerful men without letting them overthrow the state. We're talking about a 400-year-long political balancing act. So the core tension was basically between the Oba and his chiefs. On one hand, you have the Oba, with supreme authority and control over all the wealth from trade. On the other, you have these powerful chiefs who actually commanded the armies and controlled huge territories. Both sides were in this constant struggle for power, for position, and for prestige. And here's the absolute genius of it all. This rivalry was the entire point. The political brilliance of Benin was in managing this conflict. By pitting powerful groups against each other and making sure no single chief or coalition could ever get total control, the Oba actually secured the kingdom's stability for centuries. It's kind of wild when you think about it. But in the late 19th century, this perfectly tuned internal balancing act came up against an external force it was just never designed to handle: the rapidly expanding British Empire. As British interests grew in the region, their officials completely misunderstood and, frankly, underestimated the sophisticated state they were dealing with.
One consul actually dismissed Benin's formidable military history, calling its people unwarlike. It turned out to be a fatal miscalculation. This all led to the so-called Treaty of 1892. Now, on the surface, it looks like a trade agreement, but in reality, it was a tool for control. By demanding free trade and banning treaties with other powers, Britain was basically stripping the kingdom of its economic and political sovereignty, piece by piece. So, when the Obo resisted these terms, which, let's be honest, threatened the very foundation of his authority, Britain responded with overwhelming force. In February 1897, the punitive expedition, as they called it, was launched. The historic city was captured, it was burned to the ground, and its priceless cultural treasures, we're talking thousands of intricate bronzes and ivories, were systematically looted. The independent kingdom of Benin was brought to a violent, tragic end. The kingdom as a sovereign state was gone, but its story, its culture, and its incredible artistic legacy, well, they did not disappear, not by a long shot. The legacy of Benin's warriors and kings lives on in the world-famous Benin bronzes. And these masterpieces, they're not just beautiful art, they're historical documents. They're a frozen record of a complex, sophisticated society, now scattered in museums far, far from their home. So what's the big takeaway here? Ultimately, the rise and fall of Benin is this powerful, tragic lesson. It shows us how centuries of intricate political statecraft and a carefully managed internal balance, the very things that made a kingdom strong and resilient, could be completely shattered in an instant by an external force operating with different technology, different ambitions, and an entirely different set of rules.